Is it playing? Looks like it. Good morning. I'm doing the porridge thing again because I'm thinking about spirituality. So I will get to spirituality in a minute. I'm kind of wrestling with this idea of whether the term pseudo spirituality has any meaning. You know, whether it's completely bogus. In the comments section of the video I made, opinion is kind of divided on that, which is kind of reflects my own sense of division about it. You know, is it one of those concepts which either is inherently pseudo? Is it one of those concepts in which the words pseudo and real don't really apply? Or alternative, is there a viable definition or distinction to be made between real spirituality and pseudo spirituality? And I guess inevitably as part of that there's a definitional thing, isn't there, to do with, you know, what spirituality, what we mean when we say it, because something else that's coming out in the comments section and which has been reflected in some of my reading and conversations about and that kind of stuff is that spirituality itself means lots of different things, doesn't it? And you know, for some folk, and it means lots of different things for me. You know, I can see it reflected in different ways. So for some folk, it's a state of mind. This is that was the phrase that YouTuber Deep Ashtray used, a state of mind, and I think that's a perfectly valid thing to say. I was very tempted to put a comment, and I may do, Deep Ashtray, after that, which just reflecting on the idea that mind is a state of matter, isn't it? At least if you're a certain kind of cognitive scientist, you would say that mind, that thing we call mind, is a state of matter. So if spirituality is a state of mind and mind is a state of matter, what is matter a state of? I don't know. It'd be nice if that went in a loop, but I don't think it does really. So there's something to do with that. And then there's other kinds of understandings of spirituality again, which I can feel sympathies towards, which relate it to things like hypocrisy. Both Laura Layla mentioned that, and someone else in the comments section talked about that. Which for me means, you know, are we kind of referring to spirituality as a quality of a person? And if they're hypocritical, then they're not spiritual, even if they say they are. Or is it a more generalized phenomenon, or a generalized aspect of philosophy? The philosophy thing itself comes up, you know, that was talking about spirituality as a way of dying, or as a way of approaching death, which is, you know, that's a sentiment that's applied to philosophy as well. So, you know, we could be talking about that. And some people say, yeah, it's just all bullshit. And indeed some people say that the distinction is bullshit, because, you know, how you define something as real or pseudo, presumably, relies on certain kinds of testing or evaluative processes. And as soon as you're applying evaluative testing processes to something, you're not talking about the spiritual anymore, you're talking about the empirical and physical. So maybe there's just an inherent problem with the concept there, in terms of, you know, how you would go about making those distinctions. So lots to think about there. What I'm thinking about now while my porridge cooks, I've got a new porridge bowl. Like, let me just show you this. This is a birthday present that I got yesterday. You know who you are. Look at the size of that bowl. It has two purposes for me, this bowl. But the purpose is for peanuts in the evening, so I eat a lot of peanuts in the evening, and porridge in the morning. So it's going to be my porridge bowl right now. Anyway, that's kind of irrelevant. What I'm thinking of in relation to the spirituality thing, and I want to just try and do it a bit at a time, really. And the way I'm thinking a bit about it right now, slowly edging towards a more coherent understanding for myself, so I can start to make those distinctions I refer to, is in terms of spirit and spirituality as a universal solvent. I got to this by thinking about, because I like substance metaphors, right? But I got to thinking about this, thinking about the word spirit, and I've used this metaphor before lots of times in different videos. You know, because spirit has a meaning in the world, doesn't it, as a kind of liquid, like methylated spirits, or the kind of spirits, you know, vodka, that's a spirit, isn't it? And those are very particular kinds of spirits, liquids, just in the real world as concrete substances. They're volatilise, you know, they evaporate and disappear. And they act as solvents. You know, you can get grease spots off a shirt, can't you, with certain spirits. So I'm thinking of if that kind of substance is the kind of concrete embodiment of a certain kind of spirituality, what would its properties be? And properties for me would be as a solvent. It dissolves something, allows things to distribute within them, breaks things down. So what's being broken down? That's how I'm thinking of it right now. As I'm going to say a way of thinking, but I'm going to have to qualify that in a later video. As a way of thinking, or perhaps being and operating in the world, which is constantly dissolving distinctions between categories, compartments, ideas, concepts. You know, because we do tend to use kind of compartmentalised thinking, don't we? And I think one of the great successes of human cognition is the capacity to do that. We do that, you know. We allocate different aspects of knowledge to different compartmentalised areas of different disciplines, different academic disciplines, for example, different subjects that we study at school. You know, these are all the disciplines. So we compartmentalise and do that kind of what's it called, the division of labour thing, don't we? So we break these things down, and our institutions do that, and our day-to-day lives do that. I have a certain kind of job, and you have a different kind of job, and we have different kind of languages and jargons, and different kind of metaphorical structures emerge out of those differences. So there's an aspect of our being, a very successful aspect of our being, and our knowledge, and our social and psychological and all that kind of structures, which is about the breaking things down into compartments. Not rigidly necessarily, but nevertheless doing that. And perhaps, just for the sake of arguing, there's a complement to that. A commitment to a way of being which resists compartmentalisation, which favours the dissolution, which favours a kind of movement through that, which favours a way of thinking and being and acting in the world, which is deliberately unstable, deliberately mixing things up. You know what I mean? Deliberately mixing things up, mixing up the distinctions between one person and another. You know, kind of not allowing, in the way that, you know, dissolving liquids into a solvent doesn't allow these things to exist separately. They're constantly in motion, constantly being stirred by the agitations of the fluid. So that's part one. So that's what I'm thinking about right that. I don't know if it makes any sense to you. It kind of makes sense to me. And by the way, I'm not necessarily, well, I'm definitely not suggesting that that kind of thinking that I've just described is superior to compartmentalisation. I was going to say successful, that's not the right word. I think a way of being in the world that I would favour, if those are the two choices on offer, would be a sense of fluid movement between these two. So you can move to the kind of reductive, compartmentalising, categorising way of thinking and being when that's appropriate, and you can step out of that into the more fluid, anchorless, dissolved, holistic, I don't really like that word, but that kind of mobile, volatile, spiritual way of thinking. So you're toggling between. That's the ideal I would want to go for. Anyway, I hope that makes some kind of sense. I've just put the milk in the porridge. It's pretty much done. It's going to go in the bowl, and then I'm going to have my breakfast and take the dog out. See you soon. Bye.